They say the road has a memory, that every tire mark, every bloodstain, every echo bouncing off the guardrails leaves an imprint. I don't know if that's true, but I've been a truck driver long enough to know one thing. Some roads don't like to be forgotten. Route 33, for instance. Long, cracked, and quiet. Just the way I like it. Most nights, it's just me, my 18-wheeler, and a playlist of outlaw country crackling through the speakers. I haul refrigerated goods across Ohio, and I drive nights by choice. Less traffic, fewer people, and when you're like me, silence is a kind of company. The clock on my dash blinked 11:06 p.m. Cold air seeped through a worn spot in the driver's side window, and the faint scent of diesel and stale coffee clung to my hoodie. The road ahead stretched like a ribbon into darkness, disappearing into fog that hugged the pavement in patches. I've driven this route for years. Columbus to Athens, back again. Same fuel stops, same beat-up diners, same stretch of emptiness between mile marker 210 and 238, where the radio always goes dead and the GPS gets twitchy. I've seen animals dart across the road, watched lightning split the sky over fields of dry corn, and once caught a man standing barefoot in the middle of the highway at 3 in the morning. Just stood there, staring at my truck like he knew me. I don't scare easy, but that stuck with me. Tonight felt off. Couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way the fog clung to the treetops like fingers, or how the moonlight shimmered on the asphalt like oil. Or maybe it was just another lonely night behind the wheel. I took a sip from my thermos, coffee gone lukewarm, and turned the volume up a notch. Johnny Cash. Reliable. I passed a road sign I'd seen 1,000 times. Welcome to Vin County. Someone had spray painted a black X over the word welcome. I chuckled under my breath. Figures. This part of Ohio never had much in the way of charm. Just ahead, a pair of glowing eyes caught my headlights. Deer, maybe. Or raccoon. It scurried off before I could make it out. I kept driving. About a mile later, my CB crackled. That was strange. No one usually used Channel 19 this late out here. Breaker, breaker. You out there, Redbone? That was my handle. Has been for years. No one had called me that in a long time. I leaned forward, brow furrowed. Yeah, this is Redbone. Who's a skin? Static. Then nothing. I waited. Adjusted the dial. Silence. Could have been some rookie screwing around. Or a weird glitch. But something about the voice. It was low, almost a whisper, like it had crept through the wires. Gave me a chill I didn't like. I shook it off and glanced in the rearview mirror. Just darkness behind me. No headlights for miles. That was normal. Out here, traffic thinned out to nothing after 10. Still, I couldn't help checking again a few seconds later. Nothing. I switched off the CB. Enough nonsense for one night. As the miles rolled by under my wheels, I settled back into the rhythm. Left hand on the wheel, right hand tapping the dash in time with the music. My truck, an old Peterbilt I'd named Maggie, rumbled steady like a heartbeat. It was the only thing in my life that never changed. But even Maggie couldn't keep the dark from creeping in. And lately, it felt like the road was watching me back. The rain had slowed to a dull mist by the time I pulled into the old truck stop just outside Nelsonville. The kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen an upgrade since the Reagan years. Faded signage, buzzing fluorescent lights, and a soda machine out front that ate your dollar and blinked out of order like it was proud of it. I parked my rig near the edge of the lot, where the light from the canopy didn't quite reach. I always preferred the shadows. Felt safer, oddly enough. Like if something was watching, at least I wouldn't be lit up like a target. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and fried grease. The diner was half full. A few truckers nursed mugs at the counter, while 2 others played cards in a booth by the window. Country music crackled from an old jukebox that skipped every 3rd word. Same old scene. That's what I liked about truck stops. Predictable, like mile markers on a map. I slid into a booth near the back and nodded to Marlene, the waitress who'd been working this joint longer than I'd been driving. She had a tight bun, a faded name tag, and the kind of smile that said she didn't take crap from anyone. The usual, Liam? She asked, pouring coffee into a chipped white mug. Yeah, keep it coming. She gave a knowing grunt and shuffled off to the kitchen. I sipped the coffee. Bitter. Huh. Comforting. My eyes wandered to the truckers at the counter. Old-timers, mostly. One wore a denim jacket patched with trucking company logos. Another had a long gray beard that tangled in his flannel. They were talking low, serious. I couldn't hear all of it, but a few words drifted over. Gray mile. Disappeared just past marker 237. CB went dead. I leaned forward, trying not to be too obvious. The bearded one looked over his shoulder and caught my eye. You running through 33 tonight? He asked. Yeah. Usual haul to Columbus. He shook his head like I just said I was driving straight into a tornado. Watch yourself. Some weird stuff out there lately. Real weird. The guy next to him, younger and twitchier, nodded quickly. My buddy Dean saw someone standing in the road. Just standing. Wouldn't move. He honked, flashed his brights, nothing. When he finally got close, the guy just vanished. Like fog. I raised an eyebrow. People see all kinds of things when they're short on sleep. The bearded one leaned in. It ain't just lack of sleep. That stretch past marker 237. That's the Gray Mile. Ain't on any map, but ask around. Everyone's got a story. I had heard the name before, but never paid it much mind. Truck stop ghost stories. Every route's got him. I stirred cream into my coffee, watching the swirl of white spin like a storm. You believe in that stuff? I asked. The old man nodded slowly. I believe in the road. I believe it remembers. And I believe some places get thin, like the space between here and wherever else is out there starts to fray. You drive long enough, you see things. The younger guy added, one time, I heard a kid's voice on the CB. No one else on the road for miles. Just a little voice saying, help me. I'm cold. Gave me chills. I didn't say anything. Just kept sipping. They turned back to their own conversation, voices dropping again. Marlene returned with my plate. Eggs, bacon, hash browns. I barely touched it. I kept thinking about the old man's words. The road remembers. When I finally headed back out into the night, the mist had thickened into fog. My headlights cut through it like weak knives. I climbed into the cab, fired up the engine, and checked the mirrors. Just shadows and steam. I adjusted the CB, half expecting static. But it was quiet. Still, I couldn't shake that voice the kid had mentioned. Help me. I'm cold. I shook it off. Just stories. Nothing more. But as I pulled back onto Route 33, I couldn't help glancing at the mile markers. And when I passed 137, my skin prickled like a live wire. I'd been driving since sunset. That night, the fog was thicker than usual, like the sky had sunk to the ground and decided to stay there. The headlights barely cut through it, and the white lines on the asphalt kept vanishing under the mist. Out here, you get used to that kind of thing. It was just me, my rig, and the long black ribbon of Route 33 stretching ahead like it had no end. I was about 20 miles past Lancaster when I saw him. A figure on the shoulder, standing still. At first, I thought it was a deer, maybe some other animal. But as I got closer, the shape became clearer, tall, slim, and definitely human. He stood beside a rusty old van with the hood popped open. One arm waved, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. I tapped the brakes and coasted to a stop a few feet ahead of him. Something in my gut twisted. You drive long enough, you learn to trust those instincts. But I was tired, and the face of my brother came crawling back into my head. How no one had stopped for him the night he died. I threw the truck into park. He walked up to the passenger side and leaned into the window. Appreciate it, he said, voice smooth, almost too calm. Not a lot of good souls left out here. He looked to be in his 40s. Pale skin, a long face with sharp cheekbones, and black hair slicked back like he stepped out of another decade. He wore a black coat that looked too clean for someone broken down in the middle of nowhere. You stranded? I asked. Van's engine gave out. She's old, he said, glancing back at it. Thought I could nurse her to the next station, but the road, well, the road had other ideas. That gave me pause. The way he said it, like the road was a living thing. You need a lift? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. If you're heading east, I wouldn't mind riding a few miles, he said. Just to the next truck stop. I unlocked the passenger door. He climbed in without hesitation. We rode in silence for a while. The fog swallowed the world outside the windshield. Even with the heater humming, the cab felt colder with him inside. I glanced at him from the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking out the window. He was staring straight ahead, like he could see something I couldn't. You drive this route often? He asked suddenly. Yeah, I said. Know it pretty well. He nodded. Then you've seen the shift. The shift. He smiled barely. The moments when the road changes. The signs don't match. The trees don't look the same. Maybe your radio picks up a voice that doesn't belong. I gripped the wheel a little tighter. You've been talking to truck stop drunks. He chuckled softly. Drunks don't know what they're seeing. But some of us pay attention. There was something off about the way he spoke. Not crazy, not wild. Just certain. Like he was explaining the weather. Like the idea that the road could change wasn't strange to him at all. You believe in ghosts, Liam? I hadn't told him my name. I turned to him, but he was still looking forward, his face calm as glass. How'd you know my name? You wear it like a patch, he said, nodding to my jacket. Says L. Carter right there. I looked down. My jacket didn't have a patch. The air grew heavy. I slowed the truck. This is your stop, I said. We hadn't passed any lights. No signs of station. Just more road and trees and fog. But I wanted him out. He didn't argue. Just reached for the handle. Before he stepped down, he turned back to me. Some roads take you places you didn't ask for, Liam, he said. But once you're on them, you can't always turn around. Then he was gone. The door shut. His figure melted into the fog behind me. I didn't drive right away. I just sat there for a moment, heart ticking faster than it should. Then the CB crackled to life. A child's voice whispered, clear as day. Don't stop. I drove. I didn't look back. The first time it happened, I thought I was just tired. It was a little past 2 a.m., and I was cruising down Route 33 with a full trailer and half a thermos of gas station coffee in my lap. The night was thick with fog again, so dense it looked like smoke pouring from the woods on either side of the highway. My headlights were doing their best, but the light just bounced off the mist and lit up nothing. I had the radio on low, some late-night classic rock station out of Columbus, playing the usual tired mix of 70s road tunes. I remember it was Life in the Fast Lane by the Eagles. I hummed along, tapping the wheel, trying to keep my brain alert. That song ended, and then it started again. Same guitar riff, same lyrics, same static buzz in the background. At first, I figured it was just a glitch at the station. Happens sometimes, especially out in the middle of nowhere. But then it played a third time. I turned off the radio. That stretch of highway started feeling longer than usual. Normally I'd be hitting the bridge near Hocking Hills by now, but all I saw were endless trees and signs I swore I'd already passed. One of them had graffiti sprayed on it, a rough red shape that looked like a spiral with teeth. I could have sworn I passed that same sign 10 miles back. I tapped my GPS. It froze for a second, then blinked out completely, and then the CB came alive. I hadn't touched it in over an hour. Most truckers were quiet tonight. But suddenly, a soft voice crackled through, barely above a whisper. Don't stop. That was it. A child's voice. Like a little girl. Like she was sitting in the back of the cab, just behind my seat. I froze. The CB crackled again. Silence now. I checked my mirrors. Just the long beam of my trailer's taillights cutting through the fog. I tried to laugh it off, but it didn't come out right. It sounded like someone else's laugh. Nervous, small. I picked up the CB mic and pressed the button. This is Liam, eastbound on 33. Anyone else hear that just now? Nothing. No response. I drove for what felt like another hour, but the clock hadn't moved. It was still 2:17 a.m. At one point, I passed a convoy of 3 semis in the other lane, all hauling empty car carriers. Their cabs were all identical, white with a rusted stripe down the side, no logos, no numbers. I gave a nod and a flash of my brights out of habit. None of them flashed back. I checked the mirrors again after they passed. Gone. No taillights. No sound. Nothing. Just the fog behind me. By the time the dashboard clock jumped to 2:32, I was gripping the wheel like it was trying to get away from me. My hands were slick with sweat, and my heart was doing double time in my chest. I pulled over. I needed air. I needed something solid. I stepped out of the cab and took a few shaky breaths. The air was cold, wet, almost sticky. I walked a few feet from the truck, just far enough to hear the hum of the engine drop behind me. Then I saw it. On the edge of the tree line, between 2 sagging birch trunks, something moved. It was low to the ground, fast. I caught only a glimpse, a shape that seemed to stretch and fold into itself as it slid behind the trees. My breath froze in my throat. I backed up toward the truck. Whatever it was didn't come out again. I climbed back in, locked the doors, and got moving. I didn't care if the fog swallowed the road. I didn't care if my GPS stayed dead. I just drove. But that night stayed with me. Something changed on that stretch. Like the road itself had turned in on itself, and wrapped around me. And the worst part? I checked my logs later. That entire hour was missing. Gone. Like I never drove it. But I remember every second. And I wasn't alone. I woke up with the same stale taste of diesel in my mouth and the hum of the road in my bones. I didn't ask for this life, driving miles and miles, always chasing the horizon and a paycheck, but somewhere along the way, it became a routine. The truck was my world, and the miles, they were my measure of time. That morning, the sun had barely risen when I opened the door to my rig, the cool autumn air biting at my skin. I wasn't far from one of those forgotten truck stops on Route 33, shut down gas stations, and decaying diners that looked like they hadn't seen a soul in years. It was the kind of place you could drive past 100 times and never notice, but you felt the weight of it pressing down on you as soon as you pulled in. I wasn't in a hurry to hit the road again. Not after what happened last night. What I thought happened. I've been in a lot of strange situations on the road. Weird noises, dead zones on the radio, trucks that seemed to vanish into thin air. But last night was something else. I grabbed my coffee and sat on the hood of my rig, the hot brew warming my hands. But the unease that had settled in my gut wasn't so easily chased away. My eyes kept drifting to the rearview mirror, checking for shadows that shouldn't be there. That's when I saw it. A small, worn notebook, the kind truckers used to jot down mile markers and fuel receipts. I didn't remember putting it there, not at all. It had been tucked between the seat cushions, buried like a forgotten relic. I didn't know whose it was, but something about it made me open it. Something told me I had to. The first page was dated almost 10 years ago. It was my brother's handwriting. The road's never straight. Not the way we see it. Something shifts when the fog rolls in. Watch for the signs. Don't follow the trail if you see the shadows. I froze. I hadn't thought about my brother in years. Not like this. Not since he died. It was a car accident, or so they told me. But even now I knew better. It had been too quick, too clean. He was driving home, then gone. Like a flicker of a light. My mind had always told me there was more to it. That feeling of unfinished business, like a page ripped from a story. I turned the page, heart pounding now. My hands weren't shaking, but my mind sure as hell was. James Harrow is watching. The road calls him, but it doesn't call me. I'm trying to stop him. He's trying to cross, and I don't think I can stop it. It's not just a road anymore. There's something behind it. Something that waits when you fall asleep behind the wheel. And it watches when you close your eyes. We're not supposed to be here. I read it again, slower this time. My brother had written this. He'd known James Harrow. The name was familiar, too familiar. James, the guy who'd been at the roadside last night, speaking in riddles like he knew everything. Like he'd been waiting for me. And there it was, a single phrase that hit me like a punch in the gut. He's trying to cross. What the hell had my brother meant by that? Was James trying to cross into something? A place? A time? A different world? I couldn't make sense of it, but I knew one thing for sure. My brother wasn't just another casualty of the road. He was part of something. Something big. Something that still had a grip on me. I shoved the notebook back in the seat and slammed the door, desperate to get back on the road, desperate to run for whatever had just rattled me. But I couldn't. Not this time. Not when I knew my brother's last days had been spent chasing shadows. I was already in too deep, and I wasn't about to stop. The sun barely lit the horizon when I started up the truck. The diesel roared to life, but the dread in my chest refused to fade. I felt like I was driving into something, not away. Something I couldn't shake, no matter how fast I went. I glanced at the road ahead, the mist beginning to roll over the pavement. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I wasn't just chasing the past anymore. The past was chasing me, and if I didn't find out what was on the other side of this road, I wasn't going to be driving much longer. The fog thickened, and the headlights barely pierced the darkness. And then I saw it. The road sign up ahead. Mile marker 237. I had passed this sign at least 100 times. But today it looked different. The paint was worn off, the numbers barely legible, but there was something about the way the light hit it that felt wrong. Almost like it was waiting for me. I hit the brakes, slowing down, though my heart was racing. I was too far from the last town to turn back now. And besides, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the next breadcrumb. Mile marker 237. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I would. I had to. I pulled the rig to the side, the tires grinding against the gravel as I killed the engine. The road was still silent, but I could feel the weight of something watching from the shadows. I reached for the CB radio, fingers brushing the worn buttons. I wasn't sure why, but I had to try. Breaker 19. Anyone out there? Nothing. The static filled the cabin, an eerie quiet. Then, through the static, a voice cracked. "Don't stop, trucker." Not yet. My heart stopped in my chest. The voice wasn't from the radio. It was from behind me. I didn't dare turn around. I had never been the type to believe in folklore, or whatever the locals were calling it. Superstitions, ghosts, and things that go bump in the night. They had no place in my world of diesel engines and the hum of tires on endless highways. But when I found myself veering off the familiar road and into the dense forest, there was a part of me that wondered if maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. I had pulled into a small, run-down rest stop at the edge of Route 33, far from any towns, hoping to stretch my legs. The air was thick with fog, and the moon barely pierced through the clouds above. The place looked abandoned. Old vending machines with the glass cracked, the lights flickering in time with the cricket's call, and a dusty, weathered bench near a gas pump. But what made my skin prickle was the smell. It was sour, like something was rotting in the trees, too far to see but close enough to feel. I'd barely set foot outside when I saw him again. James Harrow. His silhouette stood just beyond the flickering light of the pump. He wasn't holding the same calm demeanor as the first time I'd met him. He had a strange urgency in his eyes, something darker. "Thought you might stop here," he said, his voice low but steady. It was unsettling how he always seemed to know where I'd be, as if he'd been expecting me. His eyes, almost too calm for someone standing in the middle of nowhere, were fixed on me. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I'd been hearing his voice in my head for days now, like a murmur that never fully went away. I had to know what he was doing here, what this road had to do with my brother. My hands tightened around the door handle, my knuckles going white. "Liam, this place, it's a threshold," he said, his voice trailing off, like he was speaking to someone else. He stepped closer, his shadow consuming the space between us. "A place that doesn't belong to either side, life or death." I frowned. "What do you mean?" James glanced over his shoulder, like he was checking for something. "It's not the road that's haunted. It's the space between the lines. The cracks where time doesn't follow the rules." He paused. "You think your brother died by accident, don't you?" The mention of my brother made my heart lurch. A tightness settled in my chest, and for the first time since meeting James, I felt my control slip. "What the hell do you know about my brother?" I growled, stepping forward, trying to maintain some distance. James's lips curled into a small, almost amused smile. "More than you think. More than you've ever wanted to know." I stared at him, trying to keep the chill crawling up my spine from breaking my composure. But I felt something shift in the air around us, like the world was watching, listening, waiting. I glanced around the rest stop. There was nothing to see, but it felt like there was more out there, hidden, just beyond my vision. My gaze flicked back to James. He stood there, the silence stretching between us like the deep abyss of space. "You were right to be looking for him," James said quietly, almost like he was talking to himself. "But you're too late. The road is already changing." He nodded toward the woods, where a narrow dirt path wound deep into the trees, darker than the rest of the night around us. "It needs an offering." "An offering?" I asked, my voice strained. He nodded again. "Something to balance the scales. Life for life. The dead need a way to cross, and so do you." I didn't know what he meant, but I couldn't ignore the creeping dread settling in my stomach. "I'm not following you." "What do you want from me, James?" James's eyes narrowed. "Not from you, Liam. For you." He turned, leading me down the narrow path toward the trees. My feet moved on their own, following him without thinking. Something tugged at me, an unshakable feeling that I had to see whatever was ahead, had to know what he was doing. We reached a small clearing deep in the woods. The fog hung thicker here, suffocating everything. A makeshift altar stood in the center, constructed from broken truck parts and old scrap metal. At first glance, it didn't make sense. Wires snaking through the rusted remains of an old engine, shards of shattered glass scattered around. But there was something about the arrangement that felt deliberate, purposeful. James stood beside it, breathing softly, almost reverently. "This is where it happens," he whispered. "The crossing. You can't escape it now. You're already tied to it." I wanted to run. I want to get in my truck, drive far, far away from this madness. But my legs wouldn't move. My body was frozen, bound by some unseen force. James raised his arms, his eyes closed. We're all connected, Liam. You, me, your brother. This road. You don't see it, but you've always been part of it. He took a long, slow breath. And now, you'll understand why. Suddenly, there was a cold gust of wind. It whipped through the trees, shaking the leaves and carrying with it a strange sound, like whispers, faint but undeniable, rising from the ground beneath us. I felt it then, a pressure, thick and suffocating, pressing against my chest. I knew it was coming. The ritual, the one James had spoken of, the one that he and my brother had started, one that had led my brother to his death. I wasn't just a bystander. This wasn't just about James or the road. This was about me, too. And I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. Before I could stop myself, I stepped forward, my hand reaching toward the altar, drawn in by some unseen force. The air crackled with something dark, electric. Stop, James whispered, but it wasn't a command. It was an invitation. This road will never let you go, but you can still choose what side you want to be on. I froze, my hand inches from the altar. The whispers around me grew louder, the wind howling through the trees, and in that moment, I understood. This road, this cursed stretch of Route 33, didn't just take my brother. It took something from all of us. And if I wasn't careful, it would take me too. I pulled my hand back, breath shallow, my mind racing. Whatever this was, whatever James was trying to do, it wasn't just about him. It was about the road, and it had already started claiming me. The road always looked different at night. Not in the way the daylight hides shadows, but in the way it seems to stretch beyond the limits of what you know. Like it's pulling you in, deeper into something you can't see, something you can't quite touch. But you feel it. You always feel it. And tonight, I felt it worse than ever. I had been driving for hours, lost in the hum of the tires on the asphalt, the rhythmic pulse of the engine, and the distant static of my CB radio. I hadn't seen another truck for miles, which wasn't exactly rare, but the emptiness was getting to me. The dark seemed to thicken with every turn, like the air was turning to glue. I could feel my skin tightening, a chill crawling up my spine. Maybe it was the fog. Hell, maybe it was the road itself, but something about tonight didn't feel right. I tried shaking it off. Keep driving. It's just the mind playing tricks. But I couldn't ignore the weight that was pressing down on me. The feeling that someone was watching. Not just a casual glance, but a constant, knowing presence. Like someone, or something, was waiting for me to blink, to make a mistake. And it wasn't the kind of mistake you could come back from. My truck passed the mile marker where I had last seen James. I hadn't heard from him since that night, thank God. But the memory of his cold eyes and those strange words still hung around me like smoke. The more I thought about him, the more the weight on my chest grew. I should have never stopped for him. I should have driven right past. But like always, I didn't listen to my gut. I stopped, and I paid for it. Then I saw something. A flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. A figure, tall, slim, with a shadowed face, just standing there on the side of the road. No other cars in sight. No reason for anyone to be out there, especially not this deep into the night. I slowed. Maybe it was another hitchhiker. Maybe it was someone in need. I tried to tell myself it was just that. But deep down, I knew better. I stopped, putting the truck in park. The air outside was cold, biting, and the fog had thickened to a point where I could barely see beyond the end of my headlights. The figure didn't move, just stood there, perfectly still. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind screaming at me to drive away, but I didn't. Not this time. I cracked the window, just enough to speak. Need a lift. My voice sounded almost foreign to my own ears. Hoarse, unsure. The figure didn't reply. Then, in a low, steady tone, a voice came from the darkness. I've been waiting for you. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. Even if I had never heard it before, I knew it. James. It was James. I didn't need to see his face to know it was him. I could feel him in my bones, in the air around me. The same unsettling energy that clung to him the last time I saw him. He stepped closer to the truck, his face still hidden in the darkness. I've been looking for you, Liam. I thought I lost you, but here you are. I felt a knot twist in my gut. The fear that had been lurking in the back of my mind was now front and center. I should have just driven off, but my hands were frozen. My foot hovered over the gas pedal, but nothing moved. I was caught, trapped in his gaze, even though I couldn't see his eyes. What do you want? I tried to sound steady, but my voice shook. You're the one who wants something, aren't you? You've been looking for answers, just like me, he said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. I glanced down at the truck's interior mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw something. A glimpse of his face reflected back in the glass. Too quick to be real, but it didn't matter. I knew it was him, and something in the pit of my stomach told me I wasn't getting out of this easily. He leaned in closer, his hand reaching for the window. You're closer than you think, Liam. Don't you want to know the truth? You've been asking the wrong questions. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the curiosity was burning. What truth? What was he talking about? He was twisting my thoughts, warping everything I'd known. Get in the truck, he said softly, almost pleading. Come with me. I can show you what you've been missing. My mind raced. I should have refused. I should have slammed the door shut and driven off. But a part of me, the part that had been searching for closure since the night my brother died on this road, was tempted. God help me, I was tempted. I gritted my teeth, trying to focus. What's your game, James? The figure finally stepped into the light, his face half illuminated by the dim glow of the headlights. He wasn't the same man I'd seen before. He looked different. Pale, almost ghostly, with eyes that seemed too wide, too dark. They gleamed with something I couldn't describe. You've been looking for answers all this time, Liam. Haven't you? You want to know what really happened? Why your brother died? Why the road? He trailed off, letting the question hang in the air. I stared at him, my heart pounding. He knew too much. Too damn much. And then, before I could make up my mind, the fog thickened even more, enveloping the truck in an eerie, suffocating shroud. The world outside blurred, and the sound of my own breath seemed distant, like I wasn't breathing at all. James stepped back, a dark smile curling on his lips. I'll see you again, Liam. I'll always find you. And then, just like that, he was gone, vanished into the fog. I waited for a moment, breathless, heart racing, but there was nothing, not a single sound, not a trace of him. The road ahead was empty, the night still as ever. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. The hunt had only just begun. The fog had rolled in thick by the time I passed mile marker 237, a worn-out sign that had once been bright white, but now barely clung to the metal pole, a shadow of its former self. The road ahead stretched like a dark ribbon through the trees, the asphalt slick and shimmering under the dim glow of my headlights. I'd driven this stretch hundreds of times, but tonight, the air felt different, too still, like the world was holding its breath. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to shake it off, but it wasn't easy. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white, as I kept my eyes fixed on the road. There was a tightness in my chest, a familiar feeling that I knew well, the kind of unease that always came after something I didn't understand, something I couldn't explain. I had passed this mile marker so many times, but tonight, it felt wrong. I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing. The road behind me was empty, as it had been for miles. But then, there was a flicker, a shadow in the trees. I slowed, my heart pounding in my throat. I couldn't tell if it was a trick of the light or something more. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did. I pulled over to the shoulder, the truck rumbling to a halt as the engine sputtered. It felt like the world had quieted around me, like even the wind had stopped moving. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty road ahead, listening to the hum of the truck's idle engine. The silence was deafening. And then I saw it, a figure standing in the tree line, just beyond the guardrail. At first, I thought it was a trick of my tired eyes, but as I blinked, it didn't disappear. The figure was tall, slender, and draped in dark clothing, almost blending into the night. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't explain it, but I knew, deep down I knew, it was him. James. I hadn't seen him in days, but I'd been expecting this. You can't outrun someone like James Harrow. I grabbed the handle of the door, but before I could open it, the figure stepped forward, emerging from the shadows with an eerie grace. Liam, James said, his voice smooth, almost like he was speaking in a dream. You're here. I froze. How did he know my name? I hadn't told him. I hadn't told anyone. But there he was, standing in front of my truck, a strange calmness in his eyes, like he belonged there. like he'd always been there. You've been looking for answers, haven't you? His lips curled into a smile, but there was nothing warm about it. I know you have. We're all looking for answers, Liam. But some answers, they come at a price. I stepped out of the truck, my legs shaky. The ground felt unsteady beneath me, like the earth itself was shifting. The trees around us seemed to lean in, their branches swaying despite the stillness of the air. I could feel the weight of the place pressing down on me. What do you want? I managed to force the words out, my voice thick with uncertainty. Why are you doing this? James tilted his head, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. It's not about what I want, Liam. It's about what the road wants. And the road, it has chosen you. His words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I didn't understand. None of it made sense. But then, in that moment, something clicked. Something I hadn't been able to put together before. My brother. I stepped forward, closer to James, the truth creeping up on me, piece by piece. You knew him, didn't you? I said, my voice barely a whisper. You knew my brother. James smiled, the expression twisting into something dark. Oh, I knew him all right. He was looking for the same thing you are. Answers. He wanted to understand the road, the way it bends, the way it calls. But there are things, Liam, that you can't understand. Not yet. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My brother had been on the same path, searching for the same truth. And now, here I was, trapped in the same twisted game. James had been pulling the strings all along. He was the reason my brother was dead, the reason I couldn't escape the road. The road is alive, Liam, James continued, his voice growing quieter, more intense. It speaks to those who listen, and it wants you to listen too. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. What does it want? James took a slow step toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. It wants you to finish what you started, to take the next step. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What next step? What was he talking about? And then, just like that, it hit me. The memory of that night, the night my brother died, came flooding back in a wave of pain. The truck, the blood, the strange symbols carved into the metal. The way he had looked at me, his eyes wide with fear, trying to warn me. You tried to stop it, didn't you? I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. You tried to stop him from crossing. James's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. It's already too late for that, Liam. The crossing has already begun. And you're the one who's going to finish it. I felt the ground beneath me shift again, like the road itself was moving. My breath caught in my chest as I realized the truth. This wasn't just about my brother. This wasn't just about the road. This was about something bigger, something ancient, something that had been waiting for me. And I was running out of time. The wind howled through the trees like a warning, but I couldn't hear it over the pounding of my own heartbeat. I stood frozen in the woods, staring at the twisted scene in front of me. The firelight flickered across the strange altar James had set up, casting long, crooked shadows that stretched into the darkness. I wasn't sure how long I'd been following him, or even if I was still following reality. Everything had become a blur of wrong turns and strange murmurs. But somehow I'd ended up here, just a few steps away from whatever madness James was about to unleash. He was standing over the altar now, his hands raised to the sky like some kind of preacher, his face lit by the flickering flames. He looked too calm, too in control, and I knew that this wasn't just some sick game for him. This was something he'd been planning for years. Something twisted, something impossible. Liam, his voice sliced through the night air, sharp and clear. You finally caught up. I thought I'd lost you for a moment there. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my legs weak, and my mind was fighting to stay intact. The shadows seemed to crawl closer, bending and stretching in ways that didn't make sense. James lowered his arms slowly, almost reluctantly, and turned to face me. His eyes were bright, too bright, like he was seeing things I couldn't. You don't understand yet, do you? The road is alive. Alive in ways you can't imagine. His smile widened, unsettlingly wide, like it was too big for his face. I've been walking this path for years, Liam, just like your brother did. And now it's your turn. I swallowed hard, my breath catching in my chest. This wasn't just about the road anymore. It never had been. James wasn't just a man. He was a creature, a thing that thrived in the cracks between the world I knew and whatever hellish place he'd found. A thing that could bend time and space, twist the very air around us. He stepped closer to the altar, and I could see it now, The objects arranged on the stone like offerings, candles, bones, a few old locket photos, and what looked like shards of broken glass. The symbols etched into the stone were foreign to me, not like anything I'd seen in my years on the road. They didn't belong to any culture, any language. They were something else, something ancient. You see, Liam, he continued, I can open the road. I can make it cross over. And when that happens, everything will change. We'll all be free. Free from the ordinary, from the lives that bind us. The dead will walk again. Your brother, he'll be with us. He just needs a little push. My stomach turned, a hot wave of bile rising in my throat. My brother. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell James how wrong he was, how insane he was. But there was a part of me, deep down, that already knew James was too far gone to save. And I had been searching for closure, for answers for a long time. But now I was just trying to survive. You think you can just drag people back from the dead? I spat, my voice hoarse. You think you can play God? You don't even understand what you're doing. James's smile didn't falter. You think I don't understand? That's the beauty of it. I'm not trying to bring them back. I'm trying to give them a new life, a different one. And you, Liam, are the final piece. My mind was racing. His words didn't make sense, but the feeling in my chest, the growing weight of dread, was very real. This wasn't about rituals or symbols. It was about power. James wanted to control the road, bend it to his will, turn it into something different, something alive. Before I could think, before I could move, James turned back to the altar and began chanting something low and guttural. The words twisted in the air, wrapping themselves around me like a noose. I could feel them pressing into my skull, making everything spin. No, I shouted, stepping forward, but my legs felt heavy, like I was wading through thick mud. You don't have to do this. This isn't you. James didn't even flinch. He didn't look at me. The ground beneath my feet seemed to shift, groan, like it was waking up from a long slumber. I could hear something scraping beneath the earth, something big, something old. Then I saw it, just for a moment. A flash of something, someone, standing in the trees. A shadow, tall and thin, with hollow eyes that stared straight through me. I froze. James's chant grew louder. And then, without warning, I felt the air around me snap, crackle, and split. The sound was like a thunderclap, but sharper, almost electric. The world around us twisted, folding in on itself. The flames from the altar flickered and stretched like fingers reaching out to grab me. James didn't notice. He was too busy with his ritual, too lost in whatever delusion he was living. That was when I made my move. I didn't know if I could stop him, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let him finish this. I lunged at the altar, knocking the candle holders and bones aside, grabbing at the strange shard of glass lying on the stone. James spun around, eyes wide with fury. "What the hell are you doing?" he yelled, but it was too late. I shoved the shard into the fire, into the center of the altar, and the world exploded in front of me. The fire erupted into a blinding light, the flames turning from orange to white-hot, searing, and then nothing. A deep, unsettling silence. I didn't know how long I stood there, panting, the scent of burnt wood and something far darker lingering in the air. I couldn't hear anything. No wind, no trees, no movement at all, just a choking stillness. When the light finally dimmed and the world began to return to its senses, James was gone. The altar was still there, its stones cold, its flames now nothing but blackened remains. The ground, the trees, everything around me seemed normal, but I knew better. Nothing was normal. Not anymore. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I woke up to the sound of my engine sputtering, its death rattle echoing through the truck like a final breath. The world outside was a blur of fog and dim streetlights. For a second, I thought I was still dreaming. I've been dreaming a lot lately, half-waking nightmares where I could never tell what was real, where I kept hearing my brother's voice over the hum of the tires. But this was different. I couldn't shake the feeling of something wrong. My hands felt sticky, and my shirt was soaked in sweat. The cold metal of the steering wheel beneath my palms was damp, and there was a faint smell, burnt wood, like a campfire gone out in the dark. I opened my eyes, squinting at the dashboard. The clock was frozen at 2:17. I'd been driving all night, but I couldn't remember the last stretch of road. I should have been near a truck stop, close to Route 33. But when I looked out the window, the only thing that greeted me was the black, empty expanse of the highway. The headlights of my rig flickered weakly, casting long shadows that swirled like ghosts. My stomach churned. My throat tightened. The memories of the last few days came flooding back in flashes. James, that damn man, his cryptic words, the rituals, the eerie feeling that time had bent itself around me like a twisted road I couldn't escape. And the fire. The flames that had swallowed everything. My truck, the woods, my sanity. I was sure I'd burn it all down, disrupted whatever sick game James was playing. But here I was, sitting in the truck, still breathing, and the world outside didn't look any different. Then I saw the lights. Not far behind me, a police cruiser. Its flashing red and blue painted the fog in disorienting swirls. I hadn't heard it approach. Hell, I hadn't even heard the engine of my own truck stop. The stillness was unnerving, like the world itself was holding its breath. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the sleep that clung to me like a heavy blanket. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel relieved or terrified. It didn't make sense. None of it did. I stepped out of the cab, my boots scraping against the gravel beneath me. My legs felt shaky, unsteady, as though I'd been sitting too long, waiting for something I couldn't quite name. The chill of air cut through my jacket, but it didn't feel cold in the way it should. More like, it didn't feel like anything at all. It was as if I was standing outside of time itself. The cop walked toward me, his silhouette emerging from the mist like a shadow. He was tall, his uniform crisp, his face hidden under the brim of his hat. He didn't look surprised to see me, didn't ask any questions at first, just stood there, silent, as if he was waiting for me to speak. "You okay, mister?" he finally asked, his voice deep and tired, like he'd asked this same question 1,000 times before. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I lost control there for a second. I didn't even realize I was stopped." The officer's gaze lingered on me for a moment. His eyes seemed too knowing, like he had seen this kind of thing before. He glanced at my truck, the engine dead and smoke still rising from the hood, then back at me. "You don't look like you're from around here," he said, his voice cautious now. I shook my head, unsure what he meant. "I'm just passing through, heading west." "Right." He didn't seem convinced. "Well, you're on Route 33, but you won't find much out here. Not much at all. Some folks say it's the road that never lets you leave. You best be careful." His words hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt the air around me tighten, the weight of his warning pressing down hard. "What do you mean? I've been driving this road for years. I know it." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked toward his cruiser, his boots crunching against the gravel. I watched him go, my heart racing in my chest. Something about his presence felt too familiar, like I'd seen him before in another life. Or maybe it was just the road itself, twisting my mind again. Before I could open my mouth, the officer was in his car, headlights now casting an eerie glow across the empty road. He didn't even turn around when he spoke again. "You should go. Best get off the road before it takes you to." The cruiser's lights flickered once before it sped off, leaving me alone in the fog. I stood there for a moment, the echo of his words still ringing in my ears. I felt something in me snap, like a wire finally breaking. My heart pounded in my chest. My brother. He had been here. He'd been on this road, chasing something just like this. I could feel the pull of it, like the road itself was whispering my name, begging me to follow. I climbed back into the cab, the familiar creak of the door sending a shiver up my spine. My hands were shaking as I turned the key, but the engine barely turned over. I tried again and again. Nothing. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, frustration boiling over. But as I sat there, staring at the dashboard, I saw it. A small, rusted key. It was sitting on the passenger seat, gleaming faintly in the low light. My breath caught in my throat. It was the key to my brother's truck. My hands trembled as I picked it up, my mind racing. I had no idea how it got here, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence. James had to be involved. He had to know. I didn't know how, but I was sure of it now. That twisted game, that ritual, it wasn't over. I gripped the key tightly in my hand, staring at the fog outside the window. I couldn't escape it. Not yet. I wasn't done, and neither was James. The road never forgets. It just waits. I just had to find out why. The diner was almost empty. Just a few late-night truckers hunched over their coffee, fingers tapping on their phones, like ghosts trapped in a haze of neon lights. I sat at the counter, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee so thick it could have been tar. The waitress gave me a tired look, refilling my cup without a word. Like she knew I wasn't there for a refill. I was there for something else. It wasn't the first time I'd been to this diner. Hell, it wasn't even the first time I'd sat at this very spot. But tonight it felt different. There was a hollow quiet in the air, like the world was holding its breath. I still hadn't found a good reason to stop driving. But maybe it was because the road had a way of showing up in places you least expected. My eyes drifted to the window. The fog had rolled in again, swallowing the world outside. The lights from the diner bled into it, casting a sickly orange glow. I had an ache in my chest, a tightness that wouldn't leave. The road had its grip on me, and I couldn't shake it. I looked down at the table, my fingers tracing the edge of the old notebook in front of me. It was crumpled, the cover worn from too many nights spent in the truck, scribbling down bits of my journey. I didn't know what I was writing, but something about it felt necessary, like the road was trying to talk through me. I had seen so many things, too many things, things no one would believe if I told them. I could already hear the truckers at the next stop making jokes about my wild stories. Must have been too many hours on the road, old man, they'd say. But none of them had driven through the same places. None of them had met James. The fog pressed against the glass, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for anymore. A sign? A way out? A chance to make sense of it all? I wasn't going to get any of that. Not here. Not tonight. I opened the notebook, flipping through the pages. They were filled with messy handwriting, half-thoughts, random observations, and the kind of details you only notice when your mind's been twisted by the road. But there was one page, towards the back, that I'd never gotten around to filling in. It was blank, waiting for something. Maybe this was it. I picked up my pen, the familiar weight in my hand grounding me, and I started to write. The road never forgets. It just waits. Those words didn't feel like my own. They felt like something I'd heard before, something I had been warned about, but refused to understand until now. I had asked questions for so long. Where did the road take me? What happened to my brother? What was James doing out there? But the truth? The truth was bigger than any one answer. It was the road itself, a place that bent time, twisted memory, and made sure you stayed on it, even when you didn't want to. I closed the notebook and put it in my jacket. The waitress gave me another look, like she knew something was off. But what was there to say? The world had gone strange, and I was just another traveler caught in it. I stood up, my legs stiff from hours behind the wheel. The diner door creaked open, and the cold night air hit me in a sharp rush, clearing my head for a moment. But not completely. I looked back at the counter, at the mug of coffee, at the chair I just vacated. The road never forgets. And I had no illusions anymore. James wasn't gone. The road wasn't finished with me. It was always waiting, just beyond the fog, just beyond the headlights. I slid behind the wheel of the truck, the engine roaring to life like a beast waking up from a long slumber. I hit the road again, the wheels humming beneath me as I pulled out of the lot. The yellow lines flickered in the headlights, stretching endlessly forward, a reminder of the never-ending journey. One thing was certain. The road always keeps its promises. It just decides when you'll understand them. And I didn't think I'd ever understand it completely. But I had a feeling that no matter how far I drove, no matter how many times I turned the wheel, the road was never really going to let me go. And for some strange, twisted reason, I wasn't sure I wanted it to.